All right. Welcome back, nerds. It's that time of year after July 4th when the only thing we care about is spooky season, right? At least it is for me. Anyways, I know I've been saying for a while now I wanted to do a video about zombie literature, because zombies have always been a big part of my life. I grew up loving the Resident Evil video games. One of maybe my favorite film of all time in terms of just what went into is Shaun of the Dead. I think I like Hot Fuzz more than Shaun of the Dead, but I think a lot of Hot Fuzz plays off of Shaun of the Dead. I don't know. I love that whole trilogy, but zombies have always been a big deal for me. I know we went through a phase of zombie saturation where it's like the nerd's dream, right? You get a lot of the thing that you like, and all of it is not so good. That being said, there's still going to be stuff out there. So why I like zombies so much is it plays on different levels of fear, but also almost in a way like wish fulfillment. So it's a genre that can cover a lot of things. It can cover everything from this fear of disease, this fear of infection, this idea that the slightest scratch or bite from one of these things, it spells your doom. And it's sort of got that feeling of like the slightest mistake and there's nothing you can do to fix it. So you got that. But I think part of what makes zombies so scary is that they are beatable, but you have to be careful. And I think that's why I've always been drawn to the genre is, playing Resident Evil games. I remember the first Resident Evil when, that first zombie turns around and it's like, yeah, I'm playing as a STARS agent. I could just shoot it in the head and that's game over for it. But, as you get through those games, you start fighting these crazy monsters and stuff. And I'm like, that's game over. Like those hunters, I'm dead. There's no way. So the zombie genre can kind of expand. I remember as far as like wish fulfillment, you've got stuff like Dawn of the Dead where in the original movie, you've got the scenes and you somewhat got it in the remake too, but I think it was better this scene was better in the original with them exploring the mall after they've secured it of zombies and just doing whatever they want, breaking glass, playing golf in the middle of the store, sort of that idea that at the end of the world, if you're still standing, you could go out and just do it. You don't have to worry about going to a job or whatever, So there's a bit of that wish fulfillment, but also there's terror because you can get over comfortable. You can get overconfident. You can catch a disease or a sickness from just eating bad food. You don't got a doctor anymore that can give you, you have to go find antibiotics somewhere. You have to go look for these certain things. So a zombie genre is just fascinating to me. So what I decided I wanted to do today is sort of give you guys a bit of a guide. And I'm by no means an extensive, I've not read every single zombie thing ever written. In fact, I'm happy I'd made this video because it forced me to research more books I have not read that I'm going to be adding to my TBR. So I wanted to give you a starting point of like, this is the book that if you want to see if the zombie genre in literature could have anything for you, start with this book. And then I'm going to kind of divide it from there into like 3 sections of if you liked this part of that book, maybe try these. If you like this part, maybe try these. And if you like this part, try these. So we'll start with the first one I'm going to recommend, which is I do think you should go with a George A. Romero hit for your first zombie book because he is the guy who defined what we in pop culture now see as a zombie. I know the Haitian voodoo zombies existed before him. I know they have other stories that exist. Almost every culture around the world in some way, shape, or form has some sort of religious or spiritual or traditional belief in something that can awaken the dead or cause the dead to move. It's kind of fascinating stuff to research, but Romero was the one who created I'm going to eat your flesh and one bite will turn you into another zombie, and society gets a hard lens on itself in that kind of situation, and social issues abound and stuff like that. So he's the one who sort of created what we see as the modern zombie. I would start with The Living Dead by George Romero and Daniel Kraus. Now, the reason I would start with this one is I am giving you a bit of a chunky read first. It is a longer book, but I will also say that it's, in a way, it is a book that you can kind of move around in if you really had to. It covers from the outbreak through to the survival. So zombie stories typically fall in a couple different categories, but you've got like initial outbreak stuff. I kind of like that all the time. I love initial outbreaks. So you get it's really cool what you get in this book. You get a good initial outbreak. You get sort of like where events are going once it's been realized, like we're not going to win. And then you sort of have like the future of, okay, now that the world's been remade, how has humanity made it past that? So The Living Dead explores multiple different stories, multiple different characters. You've got different points of views. And to me, it has some of the most fascinating little snippets of stories. One involves, I think, one of my favorite parts about this book. And I'm going to try to, I don't want to spoil, I'm going to try to control myself here because I don't want to spoil it for you, because I do think even if zombie literature isn't something you're that into, you should try this book because I think it was really good. One of the things Romero made, everyone talks about with Night of the Living Dead is this social criticism. The idea that the black man, he survives to the end of the movie after being disrespected, distrusted by the white guy, all that stuff. Like you've got all those things going on. And then at the very end of the movie, he's seen through a window and, they shoot him. And so there's one angle where they just think there's no one, they've been shooting zombies all around this house, so it's just another zombie. But there's very much the angle of, based on the way the man was dressed and the posse was dressed that had the guns, did it matter if he was a zombie or not? It could have just been because he was black. So George Romero is he's known for giving you that little bit of a critique. And each one of his movies sort of hits on stuff. You got classism with like Land of the Dead. You've got like weird family feuding with, I think it's Survival of the Dead, the one with the island. But anyways, Dawn of the Dead's consumerism and all that stuff. But Living Dead goes back to that idea of like classism, and it explores how the news could very well be the thing that screws up and causes the outbreak. And one of the fascinating things is one of the characters, and I'm going to be honest, I don't remember their names right now. I read this book a while ago, and I thought about researching them all before this video, but then I'd need another week. So she lives in kind of a poor community. I want to say she's she's Latina, and she ends up sort of in like she's in like a trailer park community or whatever. And the attacks, when the zombie outbreak starts spreading, is hitting these poorer communities first. And the reason being is they have less law and order. So police are slower to respond to those places. They have more of a homeless population. So they're easier targets for the zombie virus to spread. The structures themselves aren't as defendable. The people aren't as trustworthy of each other or talkative to each other. And so you see in the early outbreak stages how targeting happens. And the news, in a way, there's this cool storyline in it with this news company where one of the bosses is trying to push for them basically blaming all the violence on people of color, on, the urban community, on this stuff like that. But one of the journalists is like, this isn't typical type of stuff you'd see like the Latin gangs doing or anything like that. This is different. This is something weird. And he sort of figures it out, and he realizes this is bigger than just gang rivalries and all that stuff. We have to do something about it. And the whole I love that part of the story. There's this whole thing about this one guy in this news studio trying to get the correct story out to the people. And in today's day and age, with the way media is treated and with the way that no one can be trusted to just say the damn truth every once in a while or just say things as they are without putting a spin on it, like right, left, it didn't matter to him. It was, I need to get the truth out, as there is something going around infecting people, causing them to eat people. And whether you are white, black, brown, whatever, it don't matter. It's going to eat you. So that was cool. I love that part of the story. The survival story with the girl in the trailer park's really good. That you get up close and personal with the horror with that one. And there's a few other stories as you read. I will say that in this book, when you get to like part 2 or whatever it is, like towards the end where they're more in the future, that part dipped off for me because that one does something in zombie stories I'm usually not the biggest fan of. A lot of zombie stories will get to that point where it becomes humans are the real enemy, the zombies aren't the real threat. That's been done so many times, and I don't know. I get it. I know why it's there, but I also feel like when you know it's coming, you know at that point the zombies aren't the threat anymore. And then at that point, it's just humans are the threat, and, it is what it is. They're not as scary to me. Like, to me, making the zombies be the threat the whole time is more fun. So there was another book by Adam Neville that did something similar for me. It was like oh God, I remember something about like the Fiends or whatever, where aliens come down or something in the beginning. And that book was amazing until it got to a point where who cares about the aliens? What about humans? Humans are terrible. I'm like, I get it. We're terrible, but like, that's not why I got this. All right. So start with The Living Dead by George A. Romero. You get a full dose. You get the zombie guy. You get the definition of modern zombie. You get some cool one-off stories. You get some interesting characters to follow. You get some characters to hate too. So, like, if I remember, I think there's one character in it that is this bullied kid at school, and he kind of uses the opportunity to get some revenge, which that part was kind of hard to read. So I will say there's some triggers in that. To be honest, this whole video is triggers, though, because these zombie books usually are not going to be nice to you. They're going to do things that, in fact, I just explained that one of the things they do is show the horrible side of humanity. So start with The Living Dead. Give that a shot. All right, let's move on. So let's say you liked the aspect of The Living Dead that had like the multiple storylines going on. Like you like the idea of like different characters and different plots happening. Well, at that point, I would take you to a couple of different recommendations. The first is you should probably go ahead and do World War Z by Max Brooks. And you know what? If you watched the movie and you didn't like it, you still might like the book. And if you watch the movie and you did like it, it's not like the book and you still might like the book. World War Z was one of those movies that, in my opinion, should have just had a different title. Because it was a fine zombie movie on its own. It's really hard to film World War Z. I feel like it'd have to be a TV show. Because, all right, so the premise of World War Z is pretty simple, like zombie apocalypse. You get basically this reporter who is going around and he's interviewing people who survived the zombie apocalypse and basically getting their stories. And it's a really cool way that the book is structured because you almost get it like memoirs. It's like memoirs of surviving the zombie apocalypse. You got everything from military stories to suburban moms just trying to get their kids out to, like I love one was the knowledge of can zombies swim or not and trying to figure that out. And, and everything from, like having to witness loved ones be taken and things like that, and who to trust and who not to trust when it was all going down. So if you like that idea of exploring multiple storylines and you get this cool, like sort of memoir feel of I love the interviews. And I think they did this in the movie, but like one of my favorite lines or parts of the whole book, which I thought was fascinating, and I sometimes teach this part in my classes too, because I think it's a cool thing for kids to think about, is someone could correct me in the comments or whatever. I forget which country it is, but once maybe Jerusalem, they have a council, and basically that council has a rule in it that they can't all agree on a scenario. One person has to disagree and prepare for that. And so the idea was, like, if we bring up the question, are zombies real? And if they are, what would that look like? 9 of the 10 men in the room will say, nah, that's nonsense. That could never happen. Let's not worry about it. But it's the 10th guy's job to then say, but if it did happen, how would we handle it? And there's a reason why that city has the wall whenever the news starts spreading. When the 9 are like, that's ridiculous. That can't be what it is. He's like, what if it is? We need to build a wall. And that's why they have the wall in the movie. They kind of explain it really quick in the movie, but they did a better job in the book on that one. So sometimes I'll tell my students that. Sometimes you got to play. It reminded me of 12 Angry Men and all that? Like the idea that someone's got to ask the question of what if. We should be asking what if all the time. We should be doing critical thinking. So I like that. So World War Z, if you like to explore different stories. Sticking with that, I would go with one of the Nick Clausen series. So you can do Dead Meat. I would do Dead Meat first, then do Cadaver. But what I like about Nick Clausen is Nick Clausen took different types of zombie apocalypse stories, but still gave you the gnarly, horrific zombie. So in Dead Meat, I don't want to say too much, but it's he plays off the voodoo style of creating a zombie, but does it in the Romero way where they bite and they eat and they infect you when you turn into one. So I thought that was kind of cool. I recommend starting with that one because it starts very, very small and personal, and you get this really cool story. It's literally over the course of 8 days. It's like Dead Meat day 1, day 2, day 3, and how fast it spreads through this country in 1 day. 1 week. So you get, and Nick Clausen's good too at giving you characters that, are they the main character? Are they going to make it? Like, I remember I was particularly sad because there's one character in the series that I was rooting for, and then she gets bit, and I was like, I thought she was going to be one of our main ones. So, which I enjoyed because it made me feel something for the book. He does zombies in a way that I think other authors, including myself, should look at, because he gives them the correct drive with how they should be interacting with trying to get their food. This idea that I think I've explained it in another video where he has them, they're walking zombies. Like, he doesn't do the running zombie. He does the walking, which a lot of people write off as being like they're not really threatening. But the way he does them, this idea that their goal is to get the flesh on your body. It doesn't matter what part of your body. So like in a normal fight, you're worried about somebody punching you in the face, punching you, or trying to swing for your vital organs or whatever. A zombie will see you holding the machete and just go for your knuckles. Like that's it. It just takes one bite. And so that was really cool. I like that. The story evolved in such interesting ways when you get to the end. The other Nick Clausen book series that I liked a lot. So if you like Dead Meat, or even if you kind of on Dead Meat, but you still wanted to try another zombie thing, you could try Cadaver, which I had in my top 10 list. It's Cadaver for me plays more with the like the old Norse Draug inspiration for like setting up the zombies. So I kind of like that, but you get it's spread out a little bit more in timeline, and its escalation is much more deadly. And I feel like he really made it hard to tell who was going to be the main character and stuff like that. And just the way it all kind of wraps up and stuff. I don't know. I have a hard time deciding which one I liked better. I kind of want to go back and reread Dead Meat again because I just enjoyed it that much. I love the first book because it's literally like, I think one zombie is the threat of the entire first book. And then it just goes from there. So it was cool. Man, see, now I'm thinking I like Dead Meat better now that I'm talking about it. Oh, well, no time for that right now. So that covers like, if you're looking for different characters to kind of explore, because that's the way Nick Clausen writes. He writes character chapters. So it'd be like, Brandon, what's happening with Brandon? And let's say Marissa's a character. Marissa, what's happening with Marissa? Brandon, Marissa, Brandon, Clive, Owen. Like, it's these, and he'll introduce characters. Even in the last book, he'll sometimes introduce a character that's got stuff going on for this part of the story. There's an arching narrative that covers the whole thing, but he's highlighting different people in that narrative. And it's really cool how he does it. Like, sometimes that can be confusing, and I think Nick Clausen does a great job with it. So you could try those 3 if you're looking for different, like, characters, if you like that part of The Living Dead where we're exploring different stories. All right. If you liked character study, if you read The Living Dead and you're like, I don't want to follow all these random characters, I'd rather sort of like focus in on a character who's kind of constantly in it, and I get to kind of learn about them and then see their way of doing things, then I would go with, I got 4 of them for this one. So, actually, I'm gonna talk about 3 for this one. I'm gonna save one of those for a different category. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, this is where I'm going to get into sort of like my comics and manga territory. So if you don't like comics and manga, I'm going to skip the next 2 in this list. Let me just get it out of the way. The Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman. Whether you like the TV show or not, the comic is phenomenal. I've read the entire thing. I own the entire thing. It is, I had to have it when it was coming out. It was like the thing I was waiting for years. Is Image Comics having a zombie comic was just amazing. Kirkman, I know I just said you're following one character. I know in The Walking Dead, you're kind of following multiple characters, but the comic is focused on Rick Grimes for the most part. You still explore the other characters, but you're really seeing his journey. And so you get to see how Rick changes over time and the consequences of his choices and how he handles situations and how he balances being a leader, but also taking care of his family. You read the comic, he's much worse at it. So the Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman, I don't feel like I need to say too much about this. I'll just say that, it's the story of the sheriff. He is injured in a gunfight and he's in a coma for a little while. And during that time, the zombie apocalypse happens. He wakes up in the hospital. Kind of got some 28 Days Later vibes, right? 28 Days came first, so maybe Walking Dead had... Actually, it's a good question. Which one came first? I don't know. Doesn't matter. They wake up in a hospital. And so he sort of gets like shocked into the apocalypse where it's like, oh my God, what's going on? I think him being a sheriff and having training is what allows him to sort of pick up on it a little bit. And he's trying to find this. It has different arcs. So the first arc is him trying to find his family. Then it's where do we go from here? And they have the farm and the prison. And if you've seen this TV show, you know what I'm talking about. But as you go through those adventures with Rick and you deal with horrible deaths and you're dealing with the Romero style zombie still, the walking zombie, okay? You're dealing with a lot of what humans are capable of and how selfish we can be. Kirkman does explore that. One thing I like that Kirkman does is he doesn't do it all the time because it took him a while to do it. But in the West, we have a tendency of making villains unredeemable is how I like to look at it. So having a character do something negative, and usually in horror, that results in them dying at some point after doing something slightly positive. So like you got this terrible character, they've done some awful things, and then they decide to have a change of heart. Well, as soon as they have that change of heart, you might as well count them out because they're going to die. Or if they don't have the change of heart, then they're going to die as a villain. And he has a character in The Walking Dead that survives the whole thing. And I was kind of impressed because I was like, he didn't do the typical, oh, well, bad guy did bad thing. Now he wants to be a good guy. He's got to die now, though, because we can't let bad people live forever. You make a bad decision, that's on you till your grave, So, which in the zombie apocalypse, the definition of bad decision gets expanded dramatically from where it is now. Another one you could look at if you want to do a manga, I recently got into, I have not read all of it, but I don't think all of it's out, is that Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead. It's fun. It's definitely got more of a comedy angle to it. I will say that like the artwork's really interesting in it, and the adventure is kind of cool. It's a character study. I feel like as a millennial, like, and almost like I even think, a down to earth boomer could get with it too. This idea that like this guy, he was working this dead end job, never having time for himself, never being able to do things he wanted to do in life. Well, the zombie apocalypse comes, and now he gets to have that wish fulfillment. He doesn't have these responsibilities that he never cared for anyway. And he makes a bucket list of things he's always wanted to do. And he ends up teaming up with one of his old college friends, and they just go about doing those things. And it kind of, you get these little storylines in between with him. You get some villains and stuff. It is a manga, so it's got a bit of those manga tropes. The Western books have their own tropes as well. I do feel like the series had a pretty interesting setup for a villain, maybe like the third volume-ish. His old boss. I thought that was actually really well done. This idea that some people just command fear, and that sometimes people are just bosses of other people because they know how to manipulate people. So I like that. That was really cool. A villain they have later on thought was kind of stupid. But other than that, really good stuff. I'm enjoying it so far. I plan to continue reading it. Just a zombie manga, it was kind of cool to see one come out. And the last one I'm going to talk about that is more of a personal character study is one that I actually kind of bounced off of in the second book. I might go back to it. I don't know, but a lot of people talking about The Mountain Man by Keith C. Blackmore. Now, The Mountain Man is pretty much takes place after the apocalypse has been going on. It follows a survivor, this guy who lives like in his own home up. I want to say it's Seattle. I might be wrong about that, but actually I think it's Canada. So way up in Canada, he's on his own, and he just gets involved with different survivors and stuff like that. The thing about this story that a lot of people either love or don't love is 100% if you vibe with the character or not. The character, at least as far as those first two books go, so correct me later, but I wouldn't spoil that if so, he is an alcoholic who literally, for a lot of the book, his other character he talks to is his own liquor bottles, like Captain Morgan. Like literally, he just has conversations with his own liquor bottles, which some people found funny. I thought it was kind of funny at first. By the second book, I was getting a little tired of it. He does run into some survivors, and there are some wicked people and stuff like that, so it has a bit of that, what humanity's capable of. But the whole thing about his character is he's kind of an asshole. Like, he's on his own. He don't want to deal with nobody. He just wants to find his liquor, and just that's his days at this point. And it has its charms. It has some interesting, like, I do think there will be people like that in a zombie apocalypse, like, that aren't interested in being heroes. They're going to figure out their way to survive, and then that's it. That's how they're going to do it. And so this book captures that. And I do think it's worth a try if you wanted a zombie book where you've got a character who isn't just interested in playing the hero. Someone who's just trying to survive by themselves and is getting interrupted in the process. So if you want to try The Mountain Man, you can try it. Like I said, I might revisit it at some point. The second book, I don't know. I just got tired of it. Anyways, all right, let's move on. So now I'm going to talk about my last category here, which is going to be in The Living Dead, if you want to see more like military people who can actually handle the zombies, like kicking butt, like action zombie stuff. You know, because there's survival horror with zombies, but there's also action horror. I like to think of it as a difference between Alien and Aliens, right? Alien was survival horror. That was scary because those people stood no chance. Aliens, they got big old guns now. Now we get a little bit, they still stood no chance, which is what makes action horror great. But, you know, there's the idea that they could kick butt. All right. So the first one I'm going to recommend is by an author, Nicholas Sansbury Smith. He wrote a series called The Extinction Cycle, which is very much hoorah military guys going in and basically trying to rescue these people from this lab. And long story short, zombie apocalypse. And these are zombies that I want to say they're runners. Like, these are runner zombies. They're like, at one point they're going through the sewers, like, cover my six, bah, 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 you know, like, they're trying to do, like, it's action, 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 action. I've read the first three. I had those as an audiobook. I haven't tried 4, 5, and 6, or however many there are yet. So I do need to continue it at some point. But I think I need to reread 1 through 3. I want to physically read them. Because I don't remember much, but I do remember. It's like I have snippets of scenes in my head. Like at one point, the island gets taken that they're kind of in sanctuary on has like the zombies show up from this ship that was infected, and then they also have. I remember the sewer scene. I remember this cool scene where they're like trying to run between the buildings. I remember the stuff in the lab, and so there's snippets I remember because I remember the action. I want to get into it a little bit more. So yeah, you could try the Extinction Cycle if you want action horror zombies. You could also try The Remaining by DJ Molles. So the concept of this one is a man who has been specifically trained that during a crisis, like in America, and there are 50 of these guys, one for each state of the United States, they go into this special bunker where they are basically given orders that they can't open up until no one has contacted them. I think it's 3 months. If they go, it's either some kind of weeks or some kind of months. It doesn't really matter. What matters is if they go so long without hearing contact from their supervisor or from the people in charge, then they open those orders and they have to follow those orders. Well, basically, the main character, he ends up in his bunker. You know, there's a weird virus going around. They're thinking it could be related to like a H1N1, Z1, I don't know, flu, whatever, right? Influenza and all that stuff. So, he's there, everything's fine. He's got his check-ins. He's done this actually a few times, and so he's pretty confident that like he'll get the go-ahead to just leave, everything's okay. Well, it wouldn't be a good book then, right? So he gets no contact. And the first book takes a little while to build in this. We build in this isolation with him. We build in this him once it hits that mark that he's supposed to open his orders, he hesitates because it really makes him nervous. This has never happened before. He's been trained for it, but this is like insane emergency situations. So he takes his orders out, and he basically learns it's his job to try to go out and out to the surface, find survivors, and rebuild America, like rebuild structure, which is a pretty standard zombie apocalypse trope. What's cool is that the zombies in this series are messed up. Like they still have like intelligence, and they are runners, and they use weapons and stuff like that. Like his first zombie he encounters is like straight up gets him with a kitchen knife pretty quick. So it's one of those things where I've only read the first one in one of the novellas, but I bought the first 3 because I had it on my restricted shelf in my classroom. And I had a student, he was looking for something to read, so I recommended it to him. And he flew through it, and he wanted the second one, and then he wanted the third one. So I've got a student who's probably, he actually told me he's probably going to ask me for the 4th one next year, even though he's not in my class anymore. So I might have to go buy that one now. But anyways, the remaining by DJ Molles could be that action-type zombie apocalypse story you want as well. So there's another good one. All right. And the last one, this is a weird recommendation because there's a lot of criticism of this series online, and I want to kind of talk about my time with it. So I'm actually going to recommend the Resident Evil book series by S.D. Perry. I read these when I was in high school. I reread a few of them when I was in college, just to catch up with the lore. What these books do is they explore the story of like the first 3 Resident Evil games, or rather 0 through 3, 0, 1, 2, and 3. It's kind of what they explore, and some extra side stuff that's kind of made up for the book universe. Now, the criticism it gets online is they're like, well, there's stuff that's made up and not all of it. And yes, but I don't think it damages the series. Like it's more like transmitting from video game to page. Sure, in the video game, we have inventory management and we got to run around the mansion and find the heart key, the diamond key, and the club key. But we all know playing the video game, we've had that thought. Why doesn't Jill Valentine just shoot the damn doorknob so we don't have to go do all this? Guess what she does in the book? So maybe not that exact thing, but you get the idea. Translating it from game to book, S.D. Perry took some liberties with trying to make things make more sense. She also built in a character to work as sort of like that narrator you have in the video game. So this, the opening basically to explain some stuff that happens in cutscenes in the video game but wouldn't make sense in a book. So they have a character built in with that. He's the architect of the mansion and all that. So like you get some interesting stuff with that. Like I said, the criticism is that people are like, hey, it goes off story. Yeah, but it's the best stuff we have written for Resident Evil. Like, you want Resident Evil in a book, go get 0 Hour, which covers Resident Evil 0. Start with that and then roll on because you might like it. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. I'm actually, now that I'm making this list, I want to go reread them. So try it out. What do I know, right? I played Resident Evil growing up. I mean, I like the games too, but I wanted a book. I wanted a novelization of the story, and I think I kind of got it with those books. It's not perfect, but the games aren't perfect either. The games have tons of loopholes and plot points that make no sense and stuff. So, you get what you get, right? It's not the worst adaptation you've ever had for something. I'll tell you that much. All right. Speaking of adaptations, I want to talk about 3. I know this video is long. Enjoy it. You give me a full passion today. Zombies are my thing. So I'm enjoying it. So now I'm going to talk about 3 books that I have. 1 I have read, 2 I have not read, but I've seen the movie for one of them. And then I'm going to talk about books I have not read that I've seen on lists that might interest you as well. So at this point, we've reached the point of the video where those books I have listed already, I have read. And I enjoy them as zombie books. So like you can get into those. These are the ones I have not read, minus a special mention later. But I've heard good things. So let's start with I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, which if you've seen the Will Smith movie or one of the older versions of it, I think you get the idea. Some people argue it's more vampires. In my opinion, zombie is a vibe. It is a sort of structure. So, like, yes, they might not be zombies by a technical term, but the way that they operate and they hunt and they work, especially in the Will Smith movie for sure, they feel like a zombie vibe. So you could try that one. I don't know. People bounce off Richard Matheson. I haven't tried him yet, but I had one of my friends tell me they didn't like Hell House at all, which he wrote. And so it's got me nervous to read him right now. All right. Another one I'm actually super excited to jump into because I did not know what it was about. I didn't know the name of the actual series. I know the name of the first book's called Feed by Mira Grant. Now, my dumb self should have looked more into this about 3 years ago because when I saw it, I was like, oh, cool, a zombie book. I'll put it on my TBR, but I just never touched it. Turns out it's called the News Flesh Trilogy. So feed as in a video feed. So she's playing with that word. And one of my favorite parts of the Living Dead book by George Romero was the whole news station and trying to get the story out. That's what Newsflesh by Mira Grant's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about these aspiring journalists in this post-apocalyptic zombie world that are trying to get out there and figure out the truth, which is awesome. And I don't know why I haven't read that yet. Actually, I know why. Because for some reason, my library, has the second book on audio, and I've requested that they get the first book like 3 times, but they never do it. I'm like, but you have the second one. And they're like, yeah, nobody's checking. It's like, I wonder why nobody's checking it out. Maybe because they want to read the first one. I don't know. It was a really weird conversation I had over email about that. I just really did not feel like I was talking with. I love librarians. And I've had nothing bad to say about librarians. This one person I was emailing just didn't seem to understand that horror could be a series, I guess. I don't know. It was confusing. So, special mention real quick. I bring this up because if you like the monster vibe of Resident Evil, you like zombies, but you also like there to be other things. Like, basically, what I like to say is like your grunt zombie, or grunt whatever it is, like your thing you see a lot of, and then big or bad or awesome mutation stuff. Check out Helldivers by Nicholas Sansbury Smith. I still stand by this series. You get all kinds of cool I always describe it as like Resident Evil mutations meets Gears of War soldiers. Okay, and that's what you got. Like they're diving down to the surface, and then there's stuff there that's horrible. I had a good time with this series, so that's one you might want to check out if you want something that goes beyond just the standard zombie. This is more of like a sci-fi horror, sci-fi action horror. There's also, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's more than just the creatures they deal with and stuff. So really fun series. You could check that one out. Actually, another fun thing too, I'll bring up before I move on. Extinction Cycle and Helldivers, the audiobooks by R.C. Bray. That man's voice is such a military voice that it's so much fun to listen to those books be read because just the way he reads them, you feel like you're in Helldivers. The main character's name is Xavier Rodriguez, but everybody calls him X. So, it's like you feel like you're in X's shoes. He's out there loading his mag, ready to defend his friends. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't sound like him at all. I'm just trying to pretend. But great stuff. So, yeah, Helldivers, you can check that one out. Not zombies technically, but I'll find a reason to squeeze that book on any list I can. Other books I have not read that I want to talk about, they have a series called that starts with The Forest of Hands and Teeth. I've heard good things about that one. Basically, kind of trapped in the community and always told don't go outside of it. It's giving me like the Village vibes, the M. Night Shyamalan thing with the whole like you can't leave the community because there's something terrible in the woods. But hopefully not a stupid twist like that movie. Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies gets brought up. I'm not going to put all these covers on here because it'll take me forever. I'm just going to mention these books, and if you want to just write them down or whatever. So I started with Forest of Hands and Teeth, Pride, Prejudice, Zombies, The Enemy, by Charlie Higson. I just found this one today while prepping for this video. I might check that one out. It's kind of got a Clive Barker's The Plague vibe, except opposite. So in Clive Barker's The Plague, which is, I don't know if it was ever a story, but I know it's a movie, all the kids under a certain age just like go into this coma, and then they wake up and start turning on all the adults. Opposite, in this case, everyone over 14 gets sick, and some of them don't. Some of them die outright, but a lot of them become zombies. So it's kind of like a Lord of the Flies meets zombie apocalypse. It's kind of what I'm getting the vibe of. So I kind of want to check that one out. You have Dread Nation, which is a Civil War zombie thing by Justina Ireland. You have The Reapers Are the Angels by Alden Bell. I've heard a lot of good things about that one. Stephen King wrote a story called Cell, which I know they have a movie. I feel like I've seen the movie, but I cannot remember it for the life of me. But everyone describes that as like his zombie book. I want to check it out at some point. You have Girl with All the Gifts. So they made a movie on that one. I have not read that one yet, mostly because, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, the zombie stories where they want to take a weird angle and sort of use zombies as a background, I'm not that big of a fan of. So in this one, it's more of like the study of using somebody for something they have. And I might like it, I might not. I don't know. The movie, I think, is on Prime right now, or Peacock. I might go try it. But you can let me know in the comments if you've read that one. So, all right. Jonathan Mayberry has 2 series, but the one I think is most famous is Patient Zero. Starts with, I have a story about this one where I got it on audio, listened to it for about 5 minutes, and then DNF'd it. Then lately I've been seeing people talk about it online as being some of the greatest zombie fiction ever written. My experience with that book is I got introduced to a main character who outright admits that he's on the beach to look at women in bikinis. And I was uncomfortable. I'm not a prude, but the way it was written was like, I need to somewhat like your character, and to just open up with like, I'm the most chauvinistic, misogynistic, like asshole on the beach, just looking at young, like teenage girls when he's an adult. Like that, his whole reason for being there is just pervy. And so I was like, I don't want that in my main character. You know, I don't really want that in a side character. It can be funny. You know, it could be like a Master Roshi situation, like in Dragon Ball. But I don't know. I need to revisit that one. People tell me, the internet rather, says Jonathan Mayberry's great at zombie stuff. I just got a rough start. Maybe the guy who was audiobooking it just made him sound worse than he was. And that could be what it was. So I'll have to check that one out again. I'm not sure. There's Zombie Fallout by Mark Tuffo. That one I talked about a lot on the internet. The Rising by Brian Keene's one I want to check out. So you can try that. Monster Island by David Wellington's another one I've seen on Reddit. People talk about. I noticed as I was putting this list together, there are a couple of zombie movies or books that are like zomcoms, as they call them, where it's like romance. Like, what's that zombie movie where the guy is, you know, he's a zombie and he falls in love with a human and she kind of brings the humanity back out of him. Like, that's cute for a movie. I don't want to read that. It's not my thing. And I'm not against, you know, romantasy or anything like that. I've read ACOTAR. My wife wanted me to read it, so I read it. And I didn't hate it. But it's just, for zombies, I want the horror more than that. I'm there for the horror. Like, I don't really care about the romance. And another one that I remember reading and enjoying, but I did think it was too fast-paced, and I would have liked more time for it to simmer and, like, tell a better story. And maybe it has now, because I have not revisited Marvel Comics in over a decade. But Marvel Zombies was pretty cool when it came out. I remember picking up the first couple volumes and having a good time with it, although I had interesting stuff in it. Maybe they've written more now and it's gotten better. Maybe it's gotten worse. I felt like it just moved really, really fast to where, like, we go from like Outbreak to now all that's left is a few people. And it would have been cool to kind of see like some more of the characters and how and some of it also just like barely made sense. Like, I don't know, like Luke Cage gets bit by a zombie and I'm like, he has steel hard skin. How is a zombie biting through his steel hard skin? Like, how are we at least not addressing it? Like at all, like have him fall off to the side and be like, wow, I didn't really think a bite could be that strong. Like, just give me a panel or something with that. I don't know. I love Luke Cage, so I was kind of mad when he died. Anyways, Marvel Zombies might be one. So I think that covers it for this video. That's some zombie literature if you want to try it out. I'll just self-plug my book, All the Yesterdays, one last time in here. I think there's a fight I have in my book that is heavily inspired by zombie fiction and zombie games and movies. So if you want just a fantasy fight scene inspired by it, there you go. I connected them somehow. Yeah. Let me know if there's any other list y'all want me to make. This was fun. I like doing this little like side tangent of a video that I can kind of just talk about a weird passion I have. I like zombie stuff. Zombie brings out the humanity in us. It makes us look in the mirror, makes us decide what's worth salvaging in a situation that's, going chaotic. It shows us a zombie movie can reveal what you love. It can ask interesting questions. It's always got something to explore in it. Yeah, that's it. So I guess I'm going to sign off. Who do I want to sign off as today? Ooh, let's sign off as Negan. Stay nerdy.